I was excited that we were able to schedule Kim John Payne to come to Viroqua for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's hard to really learn from books, and it's really nice when presenters can come and give more of a real-world feel to parenting advice. I think parents in our community, in all communities, could use as much support as they could get. Kim John Payne presents his information in a way that makes it very practical, but also it's very empowering. It's not preachy, it's not judgy, it's very good guidance for parents to feel more confident in their skills as parents.
Tonight we're going to be talking on the Soul of Discipline theme, and we're going to be working with the whole theme of how we can, in a sense, understand that, for me at least, there's no such thing as a disobedient child. I've never met a disobedient child, even though I've been a school counselor and a family counselor, worked in group homes. I just don't believe in disobedience. What one sees is disorientation. And when kids are disoriented, they tend to push out against us, they tend to reach out and they push on the people they love the most. That's us as parents. I'm a parent of two kids, two teenagers actually. And so we're going to be talking tonight about when kids push back and push out against us, what is it that they're really saying to us?
So one of the things I really appreciate about his approach is that he takes a developmental approach and gives different guidance to parents based off of the age and stage of their children. And it's not necessarily obvious or intuitive. And so he makes that a lot easier because you don't have to understand all of the developmental processes happening. He just gives you a strategy to approach children within that developmental processing, which is, I think, really helpful. And so I'm just very excited for our whole community to hear him speak.
Let's give a lovely welcome to Kim John Payne.
Hello everyone, so nice to see you, so good you could get out. We'll see what debris awaits you when you get home, right? But we're here and, well, they're there and hooray. You know, so I won't mention about the debris again, so that we can just not be too worried about it all. They'll be fine. So tonight's theme of discipline, I mean, an extra well done for coming out for that, because it's quite a miserable theme, really, discipline, isn't it? So I wanted to try right off the bat to reframe discipline, because that's probably the biggest chore, the biggest task of all, is to kind of recapture it a little bit, because many of our experiences when we were kids growing up, the things that really stick in our mind tend to be the things when discipline went wrong, right? When it wasn't, where we felt misjudged, we might have felt shamed, blamed, not heard. I don't mean to give anyone, like a rebirthing experience or anything, but but these can be the moments that weren't so great, really, can't they? And if I was to ask you about a discipline moment at school, for example, you could probably remember, if it didn't go so well, you could probably to this day still remember the teacher's name, right? You could, yeah, there are lots of nods. Yeah, bless their black heart. You can, well, all misguided. Maybe they were just trying, but it certainly left a mark on us, and it runs deep. But also, when we get discipline right, it runs deep. Only the depth of it is artesian. It doesn't come above the surface. It's interesting. When we're off base with discipline, it pops right up. When we're sort of getting more in tune with discipline, it's a little bit of like an artesian underground water that's flowing, that connects us, that keeps things growing, that keeps the family really functioning well. Now, in order to reframe discipline, two things occur to me most of all. And the first is what might seem an unusual comment, is that I've never met a disobedient child in my life. And I've been a school counsellor, a family counsellor. I've worked with uncontrollable and violent youth, as they were called. I've met some right little rascals, really, over the years. But I've never met a kid who's disobedient. I've only ever met a disoriented child. And I seriously don't mean that to be just semantics or trying to get around the issue or trying to be politically correct. Our kids are not disobedient. I just simply don't believe in it. I think it's a myth of the worst sort. There are good myths, but that one's not a good one. And it's that they're disoriented. The metaphor that comes to mind, and that I wrote about in the Soul of Discipline book, is this metaphor of navigators at sea. I was on a ship once, on a boat out on my birth country, Australia, out on the Great Barrier Reef, and I was being taken out there to go diving, and I sat in with the navigator, and it was really interesting because he would send out this ping. It was like a noise. It sounded like a ping, and it would move out, and it would hit an object and come back, and then another one would move out and come back, and you would hear it, and you would see it on the radar, and then back it would come, and it was called pinging. He was pinging, and you know, being a dad and being a family counsellor, you're always carrying the kids with you, and I thought, that's just like kids' behaviour. I know it's a strange thing to think on the Great Barrier Reef on a boat, but there you are. And so I thought, look at that. That's what the kids do to us. Well, blimey, that's exactly what's going on. They send out behaviour, and they when they're feeling disoriented, and it hits us. And depending on our reaction, it'll either give them a true signal coming on back or not. You know, they're pinging us. Otherwise, why would they do that, like really weird stuff, like 6 foot away from us, and deny it? It's like you're starting to think, I know there must be mental illness in the father's family. Like, what? And if he's a little boy, a little girl, and I'll look at you, and you'll say, Anna, my dear, what are you doing? I didn't do nothing. And you're thinking, oh no, I just watched you do it, right? They're pinging us. They're looking for orientation. Being disoriented is just about one of the most uncomfortable of all human emotions, to not know where you stand. We're always striving to know where we stand, right? We're always wanting to orient ourselves in myriad ways. I remember being at an airport, and I didn't speak, it was in Holland, I didn't speak the language, and I was late for an appointment. I had to get a connecting flight, and things seemed to be going really, really fast, and it was, you can feel the anxiety start to rise, right? And so I went to one of these ladies in a lovely yellow jacket, an older lady who spoke some English, at this information desk, and said, where am I? And she smiled and said, oh dear, you are here with me. And I immediately began to feel a little bit better. And she said, you come with me. And so she led me to this big board on a slight tilt, and it had a whole section, like in brackets, of English, and with a big marker it said, you are here. And it was like an existential moment. It was like, oh, I knew I was so excellent. I knew I was somewhere. And she said, it's very hard, isn't it? Would you like a cup of tea? I was feeling better and better and better, And then, amongst this whole experience, it was lovely because everyone started walking slower. Everyone started speaking in a language I could almost understand. I noticed that people were smiling. It was nice of the whole airport to change their demeanor for me. Being disoriented is horrid. It's really awful. And our kids like it even less than we do, because at least we have our adult markers of orientation. We have a lot of stuff around us that can orient us. Kids have just got us. That's it. We're it. So it's no surprise that they ping us, right? Our pinging can go out to multiple sources. Yeah, it can go out to a partner, to our extended family. It can go out to our people in the workplace. We've got multiple pinging options, but our kids not so much. A little bit, but a lot of it is us. Occasionally they'll go pinging their classmates, and that can be difficult. That can be really difficult and controversial. But if we don't want our kids to get involved in social controversy, and we don't want them to so-called ping their classmates at school and their brothers and sisters, then we'll allow them to ping us and know that they're doing it. And the better we can deal with it, the less controversy they'll have at school and the less controversy they'll have with their brothers and sisters. Do you see what I mean? Because they won't need to do that. We can handle it. It's appropriate it comes to us. It's annoying and all that, but it's appropriate it comes. Way better it comes to us than it pops up in some seriously difficult behaviour or antisocial behaviour at school. We can save our kids and the teachers a lot of issues at school if we just realise our kids are pinging us and they're doing it for a reason. Now, just a couple last things about pinging. When our kids ping us, and we can, and if we can even vaguely, in whatever way we say it, whatever language feels right to us, but if we can look at a child who is testing us out, who's pushing our buttons, who's pushing out against us, pinging, and we can look at a kid like that, our child, and just say, okay, what's up? We might say it out loud, or we could just say it inwardly. I wonder what you need. You can look right at your son, your daughter, teenager, tweenager, little one, and ask yourself, what is it that you need, you little rotter? But what? Because it's annoying, right? But what is it that you need? In that moment, it's amazing because kids can sense a kind of barometric shift in the emotions of their parents, can't they? They're like they're clairsentient. It's like they know what we're feeling. It's such a drag, you know. Do you remember when we were little, our parents would fake us out all the time? Did you get faked out? I got faked out all the time. My mother would say to me, "Kim John Payne, go and pack your bag, I'm calling the Presbyterian police." Seriously. And so I'd go and pack my bag that was kept especially for these moments. And it's okay, I've had therapy, I'm fine. But and I would go down to the gate, and long driveway down. I lived on a farm, long driveway, and I'd wait for the Presbyterian police. I always figured they'd drive like a hearse or something. I wasn't sure, because the Presbyterian, we don't want to show off. Presbyterian hell is like the 8th circle of Dante's. It's the cold one. We save all the cordwood and sell it to the Catholics, and because and turn a tidy profit. They like their hell hot. Anyway, I don't know why I'm saying this. Anyway, so there I was waiting. My mother would come down and she would say, "Okay, you can come back. I've called them, and they're not coming." Right? And so I was good for like hours. I'd go home and she so faked me out. Can you imagine if you're, you said that to your daughter now? Like, let's say, one of the sponsoring, organising communities tonight, the Waldorf school. So let me just, it's a Waldorf school. So you would say to your child, Gaia Rainbow. Gaia, go and pack your veil. I'm calling the Waldorf. I mean, just look at you and say, oh my God, like, and just walk away, right? It's such a drag. This thing about do as I say, not as I do. Do you remember that one? Yeah, anyway, we can't fake our kids out. So when they ping us, they know what's going on inside us in terms of its gesture, in terms of a broad brush stroke of a stroke of emotions. They know what's going on inside us. So if we can ask ourselves, why are you lost? What is it that you need? Why are you disoriented? What's up? You could just keep it simple and ask the New Jersey question. Sup? Right? Just keep it simple. Sup? Whatever. It doesn't matter what you say. But if you say it inside yourself, I wonder what's going on here. Something really, really important has happened because you've shifted entirely the emotional climate. You've moved away from escalation, you've moved away from being accusative, and you've moved into being inquisitive. And if you look at a child inquisitively, out of care, of course, you love the little guys, so you look at them like, what's up? I wonder what's going on for you. And your eyes are saying that. Children sense it. They know it. But here's my favorite bit, the thing that I've discovered, and that many, many, many people have discovered as well when they ask this question to themselves, is that it doesn't matter if you have an answer. I really like that we don't have to be intelligent in that moment. Because I don't know if you're fans of Winnie the Pooh, but I am. And in those moments, I become a bear of very little brain and very big heart. You're right? I want to move from the cognitive and I want to move into a whole different space. And when one asks oneself, what's up? And it doesn't really matter what the answer is. An answer could come, right? No problem. An answer could be you could speak very assertively to a kid and say, Max. They're often called Max, by the way. Max. It's just one of the, honestly, some names, if you call a kid a name, you are setting a trajectory for life. Anyway, no, I've done a wide survey. Max, you may not speak to your brother like that. We do not use those words in our family. Boom. But the fact is, you might say, oh, Max, that's so hard to be upset, my dear. You come right here now. I know, that's really, like, and anything in between. One's really firm, one's really gentle. Doesn't matter. What matters is that you're no longer taking it personally. And so you're not this big scary dude anymore, right? And when we don't take it personally, often we create space to vaguely know what to do. Because then we sense a child, they sense us, and out of that kind of thing can so often arise a bit of a direction. But if a direction doesn't arise, you already, like a clear direction, you already have a direction. Because the direction is that of you've moved from the bear of very little brain to the bear of very big heart. And when our kids, and this is the title of my next but one book, Being at Your Best When Your Kids Are at Their Worst, when our kids are at their worst like that, they're melting down, they're saying horrible things to their brothers and sisters and all that sort of stuff, they so need us to be vaguely at our best, don't they? They need us to be in a different place. And what gets us to that, one of the things that fast tracks us to that place is just to understand they're trying it on, they're pinging, and the reason they're pinging is they're disoriented. Look, one more last quick little story to illustrate this. Kids usually ping for a number of reasons. One of those reasons is that they're at a developmental change. They're 7, they're 9 or 10, they're 14, they're 2, There are these developmental times when kids are just, 14 is obvious, right? 13, 14, there's this huge hormonal changes and they're disoriented. I have a 14-year-old daughter at home right now. I promise you, disorientation is frequent. My puzzling over what do you need right now sometimes gets sorely tested. But you just got to keep it up. Got to keep it up. That's one, when they're at a developmental change, something's going on. Another one is when there's a life change, when you're moving house, when you've lost your job, when grandma dies, when something happens. When something happens and there's a shift going on. Or something very new comes into the home, like a new baby. You can anticipate a disoriented pinging from many kids when a new little one comes into the house, or when a child in the public school setting or some other private schools moves from elementary into junior high, or from junior high into senior high. There's all these, they're basically the 3 or 4 biggies. There's other ones too, but they're the biggies. There are minor, no, they're not minor, they're important to a kid, but there are other ones when friendships change and a kid loses a friend, something happens and the friendship is not working out. That's a time when you get pinged. Whenever it's going on, just to stop and pause and just think, hang on. And you might have a partner at home, or if you're a single mum, single mum is such a silly term, double mum, right? Double shift, double love, double. But anyway, you know what I mean by single mum. You might check it out with a friend. You just might run the checks. But like, what is changing? What is shifting in my kid's life? It's really helpful to sort of run the checks on that and see what's going on. And usually we've got a bit of an inkling of it. But what I'm suggesting is we put that inkling of what's disorienting them together, we link it up with their fresh behaviour, with their disrespectfulness and so on. If we make that linkage, when they mess us around, then we kind of know where it's coming from. And again, we don't take it personally. It's all about needing to be able to establish that sort of non-escalated space. So that's the first piece. A great example of that was when we had moved. My daughter was 2. This was amazing. All at once, we moved. My next child arrived. I was absent. Absent travelling daddies are a big one, actually, by the way, but or mamas. But I was travelling too much at the time, and their grandmother, my mother, was quite ill. All this stuff was going on, and so I was heading out the door with my bag. I'm sure going off to do something awfully important, and my daughter was really messing me around. And I said to her, her name is Sapphira, this is not the time to argue. And because I'm going to be important. And she said, but Daddy. And she's a gorgeous kid. It's such a relief for me when kids grew up and I realized they were going to look like their mother. Anyway, she's a gorgeous kid, and she looked at me with these big eyes and said, but Daddy, because I'd said, there's no time to argue. And she said, but Daddy, I need you to argue me. So I put my bag down and sat back down, and I said, what would you like to argue about, love? And she said, I don't know, but we can make it a jolly good one. Right? So we decided actually having a book was better than arguing, but we had our share of arguing over the next, you see what was happening? She was 2, developmental 3. We had moved. Daddy was away, sickness in the family. I mean, poor little thing, really. It was only by my fingertips, frankly, that I just didn't go out the door and just say, "This is not the time, young lady." And then she would explode, and I'd say, "If I had have spoken to my father like that," you know, all that stuff. When they were reading Little House on the Prairie, they would say, my little one said when we were reading it, Daddy, we don't get the whippings, do we?" And I said, "No, we don't do the whippings, love. But don't push it," you know. So I actually didn't say that, but I wanted. Right? So, pinging. Honestly, if you've got some pressing engagements tonight, you could leave now. It's done. Look, it's just that. If we just get a hold of that one, we're good. But there is a second one. Okay, so I'll move right on. It's that discipline has this kind of negative rap. You know, it has this negative reputation. It's cold, it's steely, it separates us out from our kids. We don't want to do discipline. And I would say we don't want to do cold, disconnecting discipline. Totally. But discipline can really clarify family values. And that for me is golden. That discipline is an opportunity to clarify what we stand for as a family and what's not okay as a family. This occurred to me when I was preparing a main lesson block on the Renaissance, and I was reading Michelangelo's Agony and Ecstasy, right? Big, heavy duty book, kind of interesting, but a lot of reading. And I was ploughing through it, and I got to this part where the guild came to Michelangelo and they said to him, "How did you possibly carve the statue of David? How did you possibly do that?" Now you might know this quote, but it was new to me. He said, "I didn't carve David. I took away that which was not of David." He didn't carve anything. He just took away the pieces of marble that got in the way of him and his vision. It's interesting, isn't it? Just turned it on its head. Now, for me, when I was reading that again, kids occurred to me. Because as a teacher, or as someone working, I worked for a long time in the probation service. So when you're working with kids and they're doing things, or as a parent, and they're doing stuff that's not okay, to say to them, hey, whoa, no, you may not do that. Put it down, no. You know, all the myriad things that go on in a family from day to day. You know, every time we do that, we're clarifying family values. You know, there's this saying in America, don't sweat the small stuff. But for me, values is all about sweating the small stuff. Values happen, you know, just little bit by little bit. It's not just the big lectures on this is what we stand for as a family. You sit right down and I'll tell you where, you know, and all that sort of stuff. They're okay too, but it's just like, not so much. Discipline is all about the little opportunities to clarify family values. Now, the reason I find that really helpful as a parent is that when I have to say to one of my kids, you know, that can't happen, that's not going to happen, or tell me about what happened then, because that was seriously weird. Now I'm talking to my 17-year-old, like, that's what it just went on, right? You really flew off the handle at your mother, and hey, that's my wife. No one speaks to my wife like that. It's given her a surprise when I've said that sometimes, like, what do you mean your wife? That's my it's like, no, that's my woman. You know, you don't speak like that to her, you know, because sometimes a little degree of separation is important, right? It's like a bit of a reality check. You don't go speaking to my woman like that. I've had to pull that one out a few times over the years, right? And I know that I hope that doesn't sound chauvinist or whatever, but anyway, bad luck, that's the way I feel and that's what I say because it's a bit of a wake-up call, and I think it's right. I think it's right that we do that for each other if you're in a partnership with kids. But, you know, when one has to say that sort of stuff, what it does is it can give us as parents a bit of ground to stand on. It takes away the hesitancy, because our kids are pushing out against us, right? They're pushing. They want to meet resistance. They're pinging. If you've ever had your arm in a cast, broken your arm or broken your leg, and you take the cast off, your muscles are flabby, right? The muscles are flaccid and weak. Now, why are they weak? Because they haven't met resistance, right? Same with our kids' will. When our kids push out into the world, they're pushing out with their impulses. And when we meet them with boundaries, that's how will develops. Do you get that? Kids want stuff, they want it their way, they want to do things, and they push that out towards us. We give them a boundary, we meet it. And in the meeting of those two things is the formation of the healthy will. I've wondered about will for a long time. Like, where does will come from? I think that's one of the places it comes from. Because sometimes parents would bring their kids to my family practice. They still do. You know, I see kids and parents, and they say, "Oh, it's such a strong-willed child." And I look at that kid and I think, you know what? That's not so much strong will as desperate will. Because the kids are pushing out, the parents are backing off, and it's like desperate will hunting. Do you know what I mean? Because the kids will go after us. They'll go after us and go after us and go after us until we can make a stand, until we give them a boundary. And we're not, you know, and when we back off, it doesn't help them. And what I'm suggesting is that when we know that applying discipline helps our kids give them a boundary and develop their will, their genuine will, their useful will, that will that'll be of use to them all through life, then it takes away the hesitancy on one hand of backing off too far, or it takes away the tendency to crush them, to come on too strong and really lose it and really just let rip with a war cry at our kids. Because then what happens is that their will is, that meeting of their impulse and our boundary, what happens is we just push right into their space and crush them. So understanding that discipline defines our family values and grows our children's will, these are not just kind of stuff to say for some parenting expert like me to say, because parenting experts should come with health warnings, like on the bottom of cigarette packages or whatever. You know what? No one wants to be de-alphaed. Our kids need us to be top dog, not some parenting expert. And that's why I'm not a big fan of parenting books, which I know is weird because I write so many of them, but so many of them de-alpha us. They put the expert in this primary place. Our kids need us to stand on our ground, and a really fast track to doing that is when they muck us about, is to be able to know, number one, they're pinging us. Number two, that it's a chance in a small way to define what we stand for as a family. And number three, it's developing their will if we give an appropriate boundary. Okay? So that's the first half of the evening. That's the first part that just to try and reclaim discipline. Because you know the word discipline comes from the word disciple, right? To be worthy of being followed. We're trying to create a direction for our kids to follow us. Sooner, you know, they'll start making their own path sooner or later. But for now, it's ours, and it's our values that envelop them, that give them their base camp to launch out into the world. Now here comes the second part of the evening, and I'll divide this into three little metaphors. The three metaphors I'll give are metaphors for a child's need for adapting our discipline as they grow through what I think is three main stages. The three because we've got to be able to have these kind of boundaries that move out as our kids grow. And usually we're good at one of these three. Like we might be really good at helping our kids, being pretty authoritative. But that authoritative nature needs to shift when our kids are 10. And it sure needs to shift when they're 15, 16. So I want to try and sort of give three pictures, because so many parents have said to me, look, when you travel around, Kim, I'm kind of not so much an expert, but like a troubadour. I learn a lot of songs and can pass stuff on. And parents say to me all the time, if you talk about discipline, make sure you talk about those three stages, because that is what really helped us. So I'm discharging my duty to the parents who said that. Here goes. All right. The first stage is that of the governor. When our kids are little, they need us to be the benevolent dictator of our family state, right? They just need us to be in charge. I'll come back to that in a minute. When they hit 9, 10, 11, they need us to be the gardener. The gardener, and the reason I use that metaphor, is a gardener watches the sky, watches the climate, watches for the rain, watches the soil. My grandpa, who was a farmer, used to put it in his mouth and taste it. He taught me to taste soil for trace elements. I still do it to this day. I have a farm now too, and I'm tasting. There's a little too much sulfur in my soil at the moment. I know it. I tasted it just after the thaw came recently in New England, and he taught me how to do it. Right? So you taste it. You look at the sky, you check it out, you're turning over the leaves, looking for rust. You know this, I mean, Wisconsin, you know about this stuff. So you're checking things out. But when you decide to drill or when you decide to harvest is a decision made. There's no going back. So you listen, and then you decide. And that's what our kids 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 need. And I know 13 says teen at the end of it, but honestly I think they're just apprentices. Then, when they are 14, 15, 16, moving on, they need us to transition our discipline into being the guide. We need to guide them then, because teenagers can be, they can listen in, we can have some good conversations, of course, but they can be spectacularly disinterested in our opinions. Right? But they are very interested in their direction in life. So the best conversations one can have with a teenager are about their directions and whether that misbehavior, so-called misbehavior or disrespect or whatever it was that came up, was a distraction or a direction. Their direction, right? And then you can really hunker on down and have a pretty good conversation, even with a boy. They can speak in kind of joined up syllables and everything. In those moments. Right, so they're the three. When the kids are really little, we need to be the governor. When they're pushing on, gardener in the teenage years, middle years, and then when they're teenagers, the guide. So let's back up and give them a bit of colour. And I'll spend a little bit more time talking about the governor, because it's probably the hardest. Okay, so a governor it's an interesting concept, because it's not just associated with being over controlling, being negative. A governor is all about creating safety. A good governor is a kind of a safe base camp. It's like when our kids are little and we take them and they're maybe 2 years old, and we take them down to the park to play. The weather's finally broken, lots of other little kids are out there, the mamas are bringing their kids down, but your child doesn't know anyone much. So you try to put them down, and they just climb up you like a squirrel and just burrow, and you try to put them down, they will not, and they put their legs up, and they just won't be grounded. They won't let you land them. And so you hold them for a while, and then you sort of jiggle for a little while. You can always tell if you stand behind a young mum or young dad at a bus stop, because even if they don't have their kids, they're still doing this, waiting for the bus, right? I watched two mums. One was a swayer and one was a jiggler, and it was just gorgeous to watch. Anyway, that's beside the point. So when our kids are little like that, they'll burrow up us, and then they'll get a little interested, and they might climb down and still hold our skirt or hold our pants, but then they'll squirrel back up again, and they might go a little further, and then they'll come back, and a little further, and then come back, until finally 2-year-olds kind of get out there nose to nose and just look at each other inches away from each other. And then they'll crack up laughing and start zooming around the park and having a whale of a time. And you thought just a few minutes before she wouldn't even look at them, right? That's what we're doing. We're building a base camp. And that's as true for those funny little situations in a park as it is for life. You know, our kids need to start close, not far away. They need to be really in here. It's not that like when do I step in, when do I step back with our kids? That's the wrong question, I think. The gesture is we're always holding our kids, but sometimes it's a light touch, sometimes it's moderate, and sometimes it's really expansive. But sometimes we've got to wrap our kids right back up and hold them fairly closely. And that's what the governor does. It's a fairly close holding of kids, okay? Now I'll give a few examples of what I mean by a governor, just to put some flesh on the bones of that whole picture. For example, a good governor doesn't let a 5-year-old interrupt an adult conversation. Unless someone is vomiting or bleeding. That was the rule in my family when the kids were little. They don't interrupt. Yeah? Now I know they're golden gifts from God and about to say something Buddha-like, all this stuff. But look, if I'm talking to a friend and it's pick-up time at school, or bus has dropped them off, whatever, and I'm talking to another man, all right? And it's another man, and we're talking. This is a good thing, right? And we're talking, and my son approaches me, and he's a serial interrupter, right? And his mother has taught him to be polite. So he comes to interrupt, and he says, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me, and he just gets closer, excuse me, like this. Okay? Now, in those moments, what I'm suggesting, rather than turn to him and say, what? And we break off attention from the person we were speaking with, and what is just to simply hold out a hand, universal gesture. By the way, hold it high enough so the little rotter can't give you a high five. Hold out no, it happened. Hold out a hand. Stop. And then I would turn to my friend and say, I'm sorry, Michael. Reuben, that's another one of those names, by the way. Reuben he must need something important, but he's getting better at waiting. It's hard to wait. Yeah, I know. He's good. The other dad might buy into it, right? Yeah. It's hard to wait. How were you at waiting when you were that age? I know. It's tough, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, Michael. Hang on a moment. Reuben, what is it, love? What do you want? Now I stay standing. I don't get down to his level. I'm 6 foot, he's 3 foot, there's a reason. Anyway, and I look at him and I say, Reuben, something must be important, love. That was good waiting. It's hard to wait. What is it that you want, love? Okay. Okay, no, only under the monkey bar. You know the school rules, not on top. I know. They're so worried about insurances. Or whatever it is, you know. So, well, if you climb the tree, just make sure no one sees you. Whatever it is that you say to the kid in that moment. But Ruben, you can do better than that with interrupting. So off he goes. He will be back in 15 minutes, right? And the conversation has moved on to the badges, or whatever, who knows what it's moved on to. But the conversation has moved on. He comes again. Make him wait now for 30 seconds. Before was 15, now is 30. Next time is 40. In the end, he will start circling you. And then he'll sense a pause in the conversation, and he'll say, and sometimes I've seen kids, they come up really close and they kind of just lean in. And then they'll sense a pause and they'll say, Dad, Ruben, that was wonderful waiting, love. Good for you. It's just the right time to ask. Some people have said, isn't that animal training, Kim? And I say, absolutely, absolutely. It totally is. Because we all have the animal kingdom in us. We all have impulses. It's super important to help our kids be able to time their impulses. It's just really crucial that's a crucial life lesson. Timing impulses is becoming more and more and more important. Having kids sense that moment and wait for it and then go for it, super important. But, bear with me while I just give you some seemingly unrelated data. Just last year in 2015, the Trade Department released data that 32% of all jobs in the United States now that are occupied by, millennials, beg your pardon, easier way to say it, is that millennials now, 32% of them are freelance, part-time, or project-based working. All right, 32%. I did the math back from 2005 to 2015, took it forward to 2025. 2025, over 50% of all jobs in the United States will be unbenefited, will be freelance, or self-employed. Now the reason I'm given this seemingly unrelated data, or some of you might have joined the dots with this, is that being in business, being freelance, is all about timing. It's all about not just pushing on just because you want to push on, or buying a new piece of equipment. I mean, a new piece of equipment comes up, whether it's software or a bulldozer, it doesn't matter, piece of construction, whatever it is, it's got to do with timing. It's got to do with looking at checking the bank balance, looking at your projected clientele. It's all got to do with timing. Sensing a moment, having our kids in the future sit in a meeting, hear someone say something and go, oh, and the idea forms, and then off they go and they run with it. That's what we do when we teach our kids impulse control, and not letting our kids interrupt is just one of many ways to do it. I'm not suggesting they don't have important things to say. In fact, it's the opposite. When they speak, I want to give them my undivided attention. I don't want to split it between people, and I also want to model, Ruben, the fact that I'm being polite with Michael. I want to model respectfulness, yeah? Because I can't break off talking to Michael, just say, sorry Michael, Ruben, what is it that you want? Please be respectful when I've just been disrespectful to my friend, right? Doesn't work. A couple of other things about the gesture of the governor, just to give you a bit of a flavour, like what do I mean by this a bit more, is a good governor will understand the difference between a request and a direction. I mean, we might say, because we're trying to be polite and courteous, we might say to our two kids, shall we all get into the car? And they look at each other and think, shall we? No. Right? It might be from the Waldorf school. You might say, shall we all get into the car? But it's still a request. It's still a question. As opposed to, it's time to get in the car, boys. It's time to, no, it's time to get in the car. Yep, we can go by, yes, we can go via the horse ranch. We can look in and see. Yep, but we're going. It can still be kind, it can still be perfectly normal, but it doesn't have to always be a question. Shall we put our coat? Who would like to pick up their blocks? Is it time to pack our lunch? Right? Because because directions, when we give our kids directions, just ordinary old stuff, spoken in ordinary old voice, there's no smudging of the room or, just regular stuff. But when we give our kids a direction, we are giving them, direction, right? A request leaves a big, wide, open field. A direction gives a direction. Instruction gives in a structure. A request leaves a whole other range of possibilities, right? And then we get mad at our kids and say, Sean, I told you to get in the car. And little kids are literal, sometimes they choose to be, but they'll say, you said, shall we get into the car? And I thought, nah, right? And you think, don't you try it on with me, young man. Okay, so that's that one. Now, extending out from that, one of the things that often happens when we're giving a lot of requests is that we make them on the fly. Do you know that sports metaphor? When we're moving, so we'll say, Aiden, how about you put your hat on? No, it's not scratchy. I sewed some things. No, it's not scratchy. How about you put your hat on? Sophia, how about you pack your lunch up now? Brandon, socks. No, they're not scratchy either, Brandon. And so you get out to the car, right? You get out to the car. It's great. You have been the kindest mama. Gosh, you've been good. And you look behind, no one's there, right? No one. Your kids have just done discipline aikido. So you get out the car and you start walking into the house like Clint Eastwood. Right? You open the door, go ahead. You can hear it, can't you? Going, dung, dung, dung. I know that's not Clint Eastwood, but you know what I mean. And so, or is it? So you've got this, and then you'll say, Brandon, put the hat on. Why do I have to tell you 5 times? And you're into the thing now, and you can hear yourself speaking like your mother when you were 14 and she was having a really bad day and you swore you would never speak like that. And here's the really awful thing, is that you're speaking like it, you're even saying the same sentences, and what's totally horrible is that you can hear yourself doing it and you can't stop it. It's awful, right? And then you get everyone out to the car and you're shattered. You're kind of shaking a little bit, and the kids are sitting there, and it's like it's just not how it's meant to go. That's not how it's meant to go. Avoid on-the-fly requests. Give 2x2 directions. 2 feet down, 2 feet away, and 2 eyes and 2 eyes. 2x2. Right? 2x2 directions. And then say it to a child. Say, Aaron, we're going to pick up the blocks now, and then we're going to get in the car. But he's 2 feet away, you're 2 feet down, and you're 2 eyes to 2 eyes. Even if he won't look at you in that moment. Boys often won't. But all right? We all know that kids do cost-benefit analysis. Right? But when, do you know what I mean? We did it, didn't we? You could hear in your dad's tone of voice, like, oh yeah, I better do that. Do you remember? And you could hear tone of voice thinking, yeah, not so much. Right? We did it. Our kids are doing it. But when we give a 2x2, and it's a direction, our kids get it, and they get it in a much cleaner way. You know, and for every like 10 or 15 2x2s, you get one 20-footer free. Do you know what I mean? Boys, supper time. You know, and they know unless they come down right there and then, you're going to do another one of these weird 2x2 things. Right? But you do, you after a while, you coach your kids up to be able to basically do what you direct them to do. Now, why is this important? It's important for their will. It's important to put boundaries in place so that they can meet them. It's just super important to be able to have your kids comply with what they're told to do when they're little. Now you might think, hang on, compliance. I don't know. I moved to a rural setting. I want that compliance. Hang on a minute. This really came home to roost for me one day when I was in British Columbia, and we were doing a workshop, and a dad, he'd brought his two boys along. It was in a gymnasium, so they were climbing up the walls. They were literally climbing up the walls on the rafters, underneath the chairs, squiggling around. And he said to me something that really impressed me. He said, you know, my grandparents went through the Holocaust. A lot of my parents' family and my family died, were murdered, and I don't buy this compliance stuff. And it gave me pause. And he said, you know, I want my kids to be free. They weren't free; they were feral. Honestly, I was. This was freedom. Well, but it really gave me pause. And he said, I don't want my kids to be sheep, because look what happened. Look what happened when a whole country bought into something and just followed a dictator. They were sheep. They should have said no. I'm training my kids to talk back to authority. Yeah? I could see it. But it had me thinking all through the day. And I walked around thinking about it. And so at the end of the workshop, I just said, you got a moment? And he said, yeah, sure. He's a great guy. And I said, you know what? I think with absolute respect for the terrible loss your family went through, you know, I think when our kids are little, there's not a danger of them being sheep, because they're lambs. They're lambs. And we need to protect lambs. But when they get to 9, 10, 11, 12, they're not lambs anymore, and we need to change it up. And when they get to being teenagers, we're seriously got to change it up. Because if we don't, then we'll either make them capitulate, you know, be sheep, or reject us and walk away. And we lose them. When they're 15, 16, we lose them, right? And that's one of our biggest fears, is we lose our kids. One of our biggest hopes for our kids is they're just going to be okay. Honestly, isn't it? They're just going to be okay. Anything more than that is a complete bonus, right? But we don't want to lose them. And I said that to him. I said, you know, I honestly think when our kids are little, they need boundaries, because that's what keeps them safe. That's how they can develop their sense of values. That's how they can really connect with us deeply. They can really know where they come from as a family. So when the hard stuff happens later, they've got it, they're on it, they've developed who they are. It was a really neat conversation. We sat there for a good long time chatting. So this is the realm of the governor. The last thing, yeah, I better move on, but I'll talk a little bit maybe about the gardener now. Now the gardener, it's an interesting shift our kids take us through when they're around 9, 10-ish. Because as I mentioned before, the gardener, it really is just like a kind of a gardener is just like a big sense organ with ears, right? It's like a big heart with ears. It's really important. One of the things I'll give a few examples, or just a fast track into how what's this gardener thing. If you've got a 9 or a 10-year-old right now, or a kid who'll be 9 or 10, because they will, you know, God willing, if they survive their pinging. When our kids are a little older, the last thing in the world you want to hear is, "Don't treat me like a baby," right? Because it's shocking. It's like, and you say, "James or Janice, you don't speak like that to me. Well, you're no boss of me. I'm not a baby anymore. Like, everyone is going and I'm not a baby." Oh, you know, and you're like, oh man, this is not how it's meant to go. Again. So rather than get caught up in that, let's anticipate it. And say to a 9-year-old, gently at first, but it really picks up pace when they're 11 or 12, is to say to them, "Hey James, hey Miguel, what's your plan? Tell me your plan." My kids have heard this so many times. "Tell me your plan." Huh? And what they hear really quickly underneath that, and it, you know, takes months and years to get this all down, you know, and get them to accept it all. But tell me your plan, but tell me at the right time. Use good timing. Don't come to me in the school parking lot and request a whole bunch of play dates. By the way, did anyone here ever have a play date in their life? No one. Right? And we're okay-ish, aren't we? Give play dates. Anyway, so don't be coming to me in the playground asking for all this bunch of stuff, like hitting me from left field. Choose the right time. I've trained up my kids, is if they want a now answer, when they could learn the alphabet after they learnt spelling, I'd say, "You may have a now answer. It's N-O-W minus the W." So they'd come and they'd you know, like any kid does, they'd say, oh, Johanna, she's the little one. "Johanna, so would you like a now answer?" No, honestly, because the worst parenting decisions that I've ever made in my life have been the ones where I felt pushed. Like, "Dad, everyone's going, everyone. Like, and I have to go now, and can I have $10? You know, it's like, man, just give me 30 seconds. Give me a minute or two, or let me sleep on it, whatever is appropriate at the time. But not, so tell me a plan, tell me at the right time. It's beautiful when your kids can say to you, "Daddy, I need to talk about the weekend. When can we do that?" You just think, hallelujah. I have done something, just one thing right. You know? Because it's beautiful. It's nothing, but it's a lot. All in, you know, yeah? Okay, so that's tell me your plan, or whatever. Tell me how you see it. Whatever is the language that you would feel comfortable using. For me, it's just tell me a plan. It's simple. Tell me at the right time. Number one. Tell me a plan, and number two is tell me respectfully. And I don't mean the fake respectfulness. I was down in Atlanta, Georgia recently, and they said, down in Atlanta, you can say anything as long as you say "bless her heart" at the end. So you can say, "Would you look at her hair? Bless her heart." Right, and then it's okay. Not me. But no, proper respectfulness, like more deeper respectfulness. So tell me respectfully. Don't be fresh. Right? Don't tell me your plan in this frustrated, fresh way and then expect me to say yes. Because, and this is, again, my kids have heard this a lot, because telling me what you want and then getting fresh and then expecting me to say yes is not the way the planet functions. It's not the way the real world works. This is not me being weird. It is just not the way it works with one's boss. It's not the way it works with your teacher. It sure isn't the way it works with your friends. So why is it going to work with me, sweetheart? No. It's not the way, see, a 12-year-old can get that. It's not the way the world works because they're getting out into the world. Okay, so that's number 2. So tell me a plan, tell me at the right time, tell me respectfully, but here comes the big one to last. Tell me your plan, but tell it to me so that you show me, you understand how this is going to affect the rest of the family. Just before I left, my daughter was telling me her plan, and she said, Daddy, look, it's okay because I spoke to Safira and she can get down to the soccer game, and then she can go on to the play rehearsal because yesterday we rang Mairead's mother and she said she would bring them back. And the two of them had just totally got together and figured out the transport things. I thought, wow, okay, good. And I could almost say on the spot, I think that's going to work, sweetheart, but I had to stop myself because I said, give me a minute. And she, yeah, because you coach your kids up, give me a minute. I'll just check in with Mama and see if she needs the car. All right? So I check in, she'll go back, say, yeah, that'll be great. But by the way, Johanna, that was great that you figured that stuff out. Normally I would have to do, make the phone calls and such. That was good, thank you. And she goes, yeah. And it's no big deal, but there's a nice little bubble gets released between a daddy and a kid at that point. I'm not a perfect parent. I'm just telling you some times where I've occasionally got it right, and because it's no big deal, but it's good. Look, the Roman metaphor, a chain is only as strong as the weakest link. It's really important that kids around 10, 11, 12, 13 understand that their actions affect others. It's a perfectly reasonable question to say to a 12-year-old, look, when you did that, or when you want to do that, how do you think that affects your sister? Right? Really, it's hard for her. But if you ask a 5-year-old, now, how do you think your sister felt? She's just going to say, bad? And you say, yes, bad, because she knows to say that, because that's the only way she can get away from this really weird person. Can I go now? Right? So here's the third part to this, and this is the part of the guide. Now, some of us have got teenagers, have had teenagers, and most of us will have teenagers. And as I mentioned before, your opinion, I think we can still give our opinion to teenagers. It's fine as long as we say, in my opinion. That's okay. But they're much more interested in what they're doing, where they're going, what they want to do. A quick illustrative story of this. There was a boy called Lachlan. When I was a school counsellor, Lachlan was an amazing cartoonist, and he was drawing these really funny but crude and insulting and hurtful drawings of teachers, and they were very sexualized, they were really horrible, they just weren't, and he'd already been suspended for other behavior, because it was so easy to catch him doing these cartoons because he would draw them and it would just crack everyone up around him, right? Everyone would be watching and it was not good subterfuge. So he was getting caught, right? So I said, hey, Lucky, we've talked a fair bit, because he was one of my frequent flyers as a school counsellor, and I said, we've talked a bit, and it's amazing. I think it's wonderful you want to go into graphic design. It's great, but if you get another one of these things and another suspension, and that's on your transcript, how's it going to look when you apply to colleges? What's going to happen? And he said, oh, I don't know. It's just can't take a joke. And I said, yeah, I don't know. Is that, you willing to run the risk? And he thought about it, and I got together with the guardian of his high school class, and I got together with his mum, and she was beside herself. She was really worried. Anyway, we set him up an intern, like a sort of an internship with a graphic designer, because I needed to pull him out of school because he was not going to make it. So I pulled him out with everyone's permission. We set up this interning thing as work experience, and I kept checking in with him, and he came back, and his eyes were so wide open because he was. There were a couple of proper interns, like from college, at the office, who just told him how hard it was to get into those courses, and they also told him how hard it was to get a placement with an agency. And it really wised him up as to his direction. So every conversation orbited for the next 2 years, he was a 10th grader, orbited for the next 2 years around his direction. And he graduated, he did. We got him through-ish, just. I mean, but he did, and he became, he went into the field of cartooning and became sort of pretty good at it, and he would lampoon a lot of cartoon a lot of politicians, and got to be fairly well known about it. But he also had to learn to pull it back, because some of them were just plain rude and off-putting. So he did okay in his life, but you see, the conversation was about his direction. His direction. I'll give you one more quick example about directions. This is a quicker one, really. Is that not so long back, my daughter was involved in a party where there'd been a lot of underage drinking. There'd been some pot. Parents had got upset, stuff had happened, and although my daughter wasn't directly involved in it, and I totally believe her, she wasn't, and she wasn't, I know that, but she was there, and there was just such a kerfuffle about it. There was such just all sorts of things going on, and it went on and on and on, and so, okay. Then another party came up, and it was only a couple of weeks later. Kids recover quick, right? So it was a couple of weeks later, and I said to her, so you want to go? And she said, yeah, I do, because they're my friends. But Daddy, the thing that really bugged me the most was those older guys. She hadn't told me. I said, what about them? Were older guys there? Like, there are older guys there? Like, I'm a daddy. She's gorgeous. I was a guy. And so I said to her, huh? And she said, yeah, and they were really kind of hitting on me and Maria. Really, it was really horrible. And I think they were high, I don't know, but it was like... Now, a good guide, taking my own advice, I was really tested at the moment thinking, oh man, because all my Papa Bear stuff was going on. But I said, okay, so you want to go to the party? Yeah, it'd be weird if I didn't. Okay. So we need a walk-off, and she knows that language. Plan B, a walk-off. A good guide, a good mountaineering guide, will always say, "Okay, you can do the first pitch, and there's your walk-off point. If anyone gets hurt, or if anyone gets altitude, or whatever it is, here are your walk-offs, and you plan the walk-offs. You plan Plan B." So we planned Plan B, and what Plan B was, it's kind of funny, was that, so if she got really uncomfortable and wanted out, she said it would be really weird that she just left, just like that. So she said, Daddy, can I make it your fault? I said, what do you got in mind? And she said, well, could you ring like Maria's phone? And she doesn't have one, you see, so it had to be Maria's. Can you imagine that? 16-year-old, no phone, deprived child. You ring Maria's phone, because we're always kind of there anyway. She can kind of, we will ring you. Sorry, we will hit the speed thing. We will ring you, then you ring Maria's phone, and then you start saying, no, I'm afraid you have to come home now. No, you have to. And Maria's going to hand the phone to me, and I'm saying, Dad, no, really? All right, Plan B. We planned the whole thing out. So, I mean, I'm hoping a day where she can just stand up to 25-year-old guys, but she's little still. She's young enough to find, and we're going to work on that a little more. But anyway, the phone thing was a good one. So my phone rings, right? And I see it. It's Maria. So I dial it back. And she hands the phone, and I haven't even spoken yet. And my daughter's saying, Dad, oh Dad, and I'm not saying anything, I'm just holding it. So I go pick her up. There are older guys there. They're driving away on their cars with horns that go diddle-it-dit, diddle-it-dit. It's not good. Right? This is code. Every man knows this. Diddle-it-dit, diddle-it. It's something going on. And I don't know what, but it was... Anyway, her and Maria get in the car, and we drive around the corner, and they just start squealing with laughter. They start like little girls. I could see her when she was a little girl. You know, she's 16, going on 17, and they're kicking their legs in the air, and they're laughing and laughing and laughing. You know, at having made me such a bad guy. But they just were so. It was so great. They got out of it, and I can only presume, and I know later on, I presume then it was a really tense situation. That's why they laughed so. That's why the release was so big. It was awful. It wasn't good at all. So plan B. A good guide will always have a plan B with a kid, a walk-off point. But a good guide will really step in and say to a teenager, using the Manhattan metaphor, was that a crosstown bus when you're trying to go downtown? Did you end up someplace else? Did you end up in Brooklyn? That's not such a bad place these days, but you know what I mean. Did you end up someplace you don't want to be? How can we get you back on track? And sometimes you'll meet resistance. But if we keep talking about a kid's direction, that's when the conversations can flow with a teenager. Now, I've got to wrap up. Okay, so here's the last thing. Is that, let's say you've got a 14, 15-year-old, or will have one, and is the American saying blowing you off? They're not doing the guide thing. You're trying to guide them, and it's not going well. And they're not just making a couple of bad decisions. It's at a gut level. You sort of say, hey, this is not a good direction. This is not what we stand for as a family. This is not okay. It's not just normal teenage stuff. It's got you a bit concerned. And it gets to the point where something's got to change, because you're talking to them about their direction in life and they're just not buying it. Well, don't worry about it. Just pull them back into the garden. Just pull them back and say, Josiah, hey, you're going to have to run your ideas by me from here on in for a while. This is not going so well. You're getting a lot of freedom given to you, and it's not being used so well. And you're going to have to run your plans by me, and be very careful to make them respectful. Be really careful. And you know the drill. Do it at the right time, man. Don't be approaching me at weird times, making all sorts of demands. But most of all, Josiah, no, come back. I haven't finished. That kind of thing. Most of all, you've got to understand that you have to take other members of the family into account. And, one last thing, love. When you do it, you're going to have a ton more freedom. You're going to have a bunch more freedom when you show that you're a team player. Show me you're a team player. You're a great team player. You play beautifully. You're just an amazing basketball player. I know it. But you've got to be a team player here. And when you can do that, you can have your expanded freedoms back. A lot of kids will buy that. I used to work in a group home with violent offending youth, and they would buy it. Our kids are pussycats compared to these kids, right? They were kids, it was a gang rescue group home. These kids were rough. Our kids are a whole bunch easier. But it can get hard because our kids are also a little more entitled. But pull them back into the garden and work it hard. Say, whoa, Josiah, I know you're going to ask me about going to the concert, all right? I know a concert's coming up. Make sure you ask me, make sure you get your plan together. I'm available at 8:30 tonight for you to tell your plan to me. I mean, give them a break, set them up a framework a bit, right? 8:30, plan please. Whatever, not a good start, Josiah. Whatever, dude. Don't call me dude. That's two. Not dude. Not whatever. 8:30. Plan, please. Right. Now, what if he blows you off? So we're getting right to the end of the talk now. what if he blows you off? Now, if he blows you off being in that kind of gardener thing, like that listening thing, and then deciding, then frankly, it's like, hello, governor. Oh, really, just hello. Hey, Deborah, welcome back to me deciding everything. I remember a kid once saying to me, like you decide like everything. I said, yeah, and she said, it's like that's just. I said, no, it's just like an anxiety dream, right? And the walls are closing in. And she said, exactly. And I said, I know. And there was one boy whose dad was getting edgy. He brought him right back into this governor thing of just deciding, of telling him what's going to happen, of picking him up after school. And the boy didn't talk to his father for 8 weeks. Not a word. And the father said really quietly to me, he thought he was punishing me. Yeah. It's fantastic. Right? You will not win any kind words, but you will win respect. Because I've been doing this long enough now to have kids come back and say, that was a really hard thing, but I'm glad you did it. I've learnt from it, and I'm raising my kids like it. It's beautiful to hear that. There's generational alcoholism, generational abuse, but there's also generational parental wisdom. You pass it down to your kids, right? We really can. So yeah, we're getting towards the end of the evening. Basically, I gave Governor Gardner Guide, and I gave it in 3 sort of age group things. Then I tried to present, it's not only age-wise, because if you've got a 12-year-old, you might need to haul them back into that governor thing. In fact, you might need to only haul them back for a couple of hours. They might say something really, really nasty, and you just come on with the governor thing and just say, you will not be going to the party now, and this is what's happening, just not okay, not all right, And they'll come back a couple of hours later and say, Dad, yep, I know that was mean to say that to Susanna, but she is so annoying. What happened, love? Well, like she just takes my stuff, and then I found it underneath the tractor. I'm not making this one up, by the way. The tractor drips oil, Did it have oil in it? No, but it could have, and it's mine. Oh, so that's why you blew up at her? Okay. Well, you don't always do that sort of stuff. What are you going to do to make good with her? What is she going to do to make good with me? Right? Yeah, we've got to sort out the taking. If you lend her clothes, it was great that you were able to do that, because normally you lay over your clothes like Smaug over the treasures. I actually said that to her and she smiled, because she finds it hard to do. And I said, and you did it, and then she did that. And she went, precisely. So we've got to work it out. Yes, can you work it out yourself? I'll try. Let me know if you can't work it out. Okay, thanks. That's it. Comes back in the evening. I say to her, did you work it out? And she said, not really, but we're okay. They were okay because they went out and shot some hoops, because that's how they made up. I didn't say to her, you say you're sorry to your sister. Because even as a teenager, they can still do it. They can still say, well, sorry. Forced apologies, not good. But an opportunity to open up a space, that's good. Now, just a final story to finish up. And this might seem unrelated at first. I used to teach games to little kids and at a school, and we didn't have a fancy gymnasium or a hall like this or anything like that. So I bought 500 meters of rope, of plastic rope and a great big garden winder, and that was our field, right? Because some kids, the more fiery, choleric kids, they'd rather run to London than get tagged. So we had to have some sort of boundary, right? So we made the boundary, and and it was good. And we put it all out and it was great. But my colleague, Martin, bless his disorganized heart, would just pick up the rope. He would always run his lessons right up to the end. The bell had gone. He was, oh gosh. And so they would pick up 500 meters of rope and dump it in the garden shed. We would come afterwards and there it would be, this incredible tangle of plastic rope, massive tangle. My kids would say, okay, and the ones with the fancy watches would say, ready, go. Aaron, you go up the tower. We had this bell tower. So they'd send one kid up the bell tower, which you weren't supposed to have kids go up there, but anyway, we did. And this is in England. We don't sue each other quite so much. So anyway, up the tower, and he's hanging out the tower, you know, and he's saying, okay, Sophie, don't pull, because what we learned is that we could untangle that in usually 4 to 4.5 minutes was our record. We could untangle it, provided no one pulled on a knot. If anyone pulled on a knot, it just was impossible. But we learned to create space, and it was amazing. You just keep creating space for no particular reason other than you can see more grass, more space, and that thing would untangle itself on a dime, right? But it was so hard for the more extroverted kids to do this. The introverts, they would create space. The extroverts, you could just see them wanting to pull it, you know. Anyway, we create. Now, the reason I want to finish with that little metaphor, that little story, is that I hope that what we've heard tonight creates a little bit of space within us, so that we don't go pulling on ourselves. We don't go pulling on our kids. We don't go pulling on our family. That we can pause and ask a kid, "What's up? What's going on? What do you need to orient?" We can know that it's a chance to define our values. We can know it's a chance to develop their will, and we can know how to pitch it. We can calibrate it. Do I need to be a governor, a gardener, or a guide now? Which one? All those, I just named 6 things that we covered tonight. Those 6 things create a kind of a space, and it's into that space. That's where care and love and connection and all those things we want for our family, it needs space to come into it. And these qualities, these 6 things we went through. It's been a long evening, but only 6 things were mentioned, right? But those 6 things are what will create space for that deep connection. If tonight's presentation has struck a chord for you, pop along to simplicityparenting.com. You know, you can find out more and link up with parents all around the world who are also, you know, really interested in questions of balancing and simplifying their kids' lives, providing appropriate boundaries and so on. And at simplicityparenting.com, there's probably more information than you possibly will ever be able to use, but it's pretty easy to navigate through and just go right to the place where, you know, you've got your questions.